Hey everyone, welcome to the video. This week it's all about tailoring your teaching depending on the timetable. Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Caroline. I'm a UK-based lecturer. I specialise in physics. We've just completed the first week of semester and we're about to start the second. And it has already been quite an intensive first week at university. I teach a first year lecture class. I'm also involved in a couple of the master's lecture classes. But what struck me in this first week of teaching is even though I've taught this course now for it's my 6th or 7th year, I still find myself now needing to tailor the content based on the teaching timetable. And I thought I'd explain what I mean by that, and it'd be really interesting to see if any of you find you're doing the same thing. What I find is that obviously I've planned out my lecture course, and this year I'm giving my lectures in 1-hour blocks rather than 2-hour blocks, which I'm really enjoying already. However, I can plan what I'd like to teach in each of the lectures, but they will be timetabled in consideration with all the other modules the students are taking. And what might happen is I might have a lecture plan that's quite mathematically intensive, but that could fall on a very busy day for the students. And what brought this to my attention really was on Friday just gone. The students had a busy morning doing a laboratory-based class for several hours. Then they had a lunch break. Then they came to me for a 1-hour lecture on my course, then to a colleague for a 1-hour lecture on his course, and then to another colleague for a 2-hour session looking at scientific skill sets. So their day was incredibly full. It was busy, they were chopping and changing between different topics. And on that particular session, I was timetabled to deliver a lecture based on something quite mathematical. So I was going through, vectors, and if you're into STEM subjects, I was looking at the dot product and the cross product. There was a reasonable amount of mathematics to kind of get your head around if you hadn't seen it before. And that came right after lunch, and it was just before the start of their afternoon session. So I was the first hour of a 4-hour block they had in the afternoon. And I remember as a student, when I had these long days, how challenging it can be to keep your attention focused, even if the lecturer is changing and the subjects are changing. It still requires a lot of energy and real kind of, dedication is the wrong word, perseverance, I guess, or robustness to keep following each bit of the lecture when you've got such a long day. And I think on subjects where we've got a high contact hours, this is always a challenge of the course, right? There are some days that are very busy for our undergraduate students, and other days are more relaxing. And I know it divides the student population. Some of them really like these jam-packed days because it means they're on campus, they're doing lots of activities, they're getting through the material. Others, I think, it's just too much, basically. There's just too much content in one day being delivered very quickly. And so, it has that potential to feel very overwhelming, and you can't keep up and pace for the day when it's moving so quickly. And I find myself as the lecturer looking at not only when I'm timetabled to give the class, but also where that class fits in the students' days to try to work out what kind of tone and speed and, I guess, rhythm I can use in my lecture to help try to keep the topic engaging. And it was challenging on Friday because what I needed to teach was a load of vectors and a load of maths. And there's only so much you can do to make that topic super exciting. If you have tips on vectors and how you teach them, please let me know in the comments. And I've got some really fun, well, I think they're fun, demonstrations coming up in a week or two on that particular module class. But for that particular session, I needed to go through some mathematical ideas. And of course, that's coming then in a very busy day for the students. And I was thinking, well, how am I going to keep the class engaged as I give this content? Now, my default is when I haven't got material that I can naturally make highly energy or highly, interactive or fun, I try to do a few short, sharp segments in my lecture. So in that particular lecture, we had 4 things that I wanted to accomplish. Each were fairly kind of short and focused. And I tried to break them up, both with doing some kind of like interactive activity. So, asking the students what was wrong with something I'd written on the board, or asking them to kind of look at a question and give it a quick go themselves, just so they're not always in a kind of receiving mode of information. They get to do something active as well at the same time. But then I also find myself putting in like personal stories and anecdotes. I mean, they're all physics related in my case. I was talking about how I had experiences when I was an undergraduate and things that happened in my lecture classes. I talk a bit about my kind of, experiences being a PhD student, just because I think it's nice to kind of break the rhythm of the lecture, rather than me just doing, I don't know, a mathematical proof or derivation or just showing something over and over again. I like to show something, tell a story, or do some kind of interactive activity, and then go back and do the next bit of my lecture. And it is hard, and I find when the students have busy, packed days, I almost up my energy even more to try to compensate for it. It may annoy the students. It may be too enthusiastic. Maybe they just want to sit there and just quietly hear the material and then exit. The other thing I find myself doing is I'll tailor how long I teach for. So the classes are 50 minutes, but if they've got a particularly jam-packed day, I will aim to give them 45 minutes of really good content, with then an opportunity at the end, 5 minutes for a bit of question and answer session, and make sure they always get those full 10 minutes to go between my lecture and the next lecture. And I do check geographically where the students have to go. And so in some cases, I know that they're going to have an opportunity to go for a little walk and to get a bit of fresh air, and they might be able to get a drink quickly on the route between one lecture and another lecture, just so they can go into their next class feeling refreshed. And I'm very lucky that I work at a really supportive department. And so as first year module tutors, we kind of chat to each other. And so I know what my colleagues are planning on doing in their lectures. And so we try to be coherent and kind of joined up in our thinking, so we know what the students are facing in any one typical day. But I just wondered, how do you find the timetabling that students go through impacting your lectures? I've got a Friday class, and that comes a little bit late in the day on a Friday, so I'll definitely try to make that an engaging one, and I will probably put my demonstrations onto that particular Friday session. I'll probably do more of the kind of the concepts, the mathematics, the derivations and the proofs on the kind of the classes towards the start of the week. But yeah, it's just tinkering, I guess. When I teach things, I still have to teach the course in order. So, in physics, ideas build from one to another. So I've got a little bit of flexibility in how I move between topics, but actually some topics just do need to be taught before other topics. I do collisions in 2 dimensions. I really need to have done collisions in 1 dimension before I do it in 2 dimensions for the students. So I get some flexibility, but I don't get masses of flexibility in how I teach that material and the ordering. But I do have that opportunity to change my tone and my rhythm. And I try to do that because, as I said, when I was a student, I know what it was like, what I felt like when it was a super long day. But let me know, and I'd also be really interested to know, is this a problem or a challenge within certain disciplines or certain subjects? Historically, the STEM subjects have a lot of actual in the lecture contact hours. And some of the humanities and arts have a lot of guided learning and independent learning and a lot of reading that happens outside of the lectures. But yeah, let me know, do you find yourself tweaking your lecture content to match the particular timetable that cohort has for that particular year? Let me know. We're just about to start week 2. Thank you so much for all the lovely comments and interesting comments last week about the register that we're effectively now keeping at the start of our lectures. I've managed to do it so far every time correctly, and I think the students are logging their attendance at my class. So we'll see if that continues this week. But I hope you're having a lovely week. As we go into this new semester, please do leave me comments. If you're new to our little academic space here on YouTube, please join. It's a lovely space. It's free, and it's just really useful to hear each other's academic opinions and stories. But look after yourselves. Have a really good next week at semester, and I will see you next week for another academic video. Bye.